Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors. Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers, Chapter 5. This is a wonderful international virtual book fair, and we're currently live across all of our social media platforms. So don't forget to follow and subscribe. Good afternoon. Good evening for those of you on the East Coast. I'm Kelly Gassetta. I'm the moderator for the session, Narrative Techniques in the Art of Storytelling. I am the author of One Character's Journey, as you see behind me, and also of Generations of Cthulhu. I'd like to let's take a couple of minutes and all of our authors who are with us in this session. Tell us a little bit about who you are and tell us about your books. Let's start with you.
Did you say Louis? Yeah, I don't know if anyone else, your voice is a little jumbled.
Can we have someone in the back room? We have voices coming in the back room. Linda, are you unmuted?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We're having some trouble here. We're having some trouble here. Let me see. Let me see if I can.
Can you hear me? This is Linda.
Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Linda.
Okay. Yes.
Tell us about your books, and hopefully we can get whoever's in the background to help us clear this up.
Okay. My name is Linda. My name is Linda Cosby. I'm from South Carolina. I wrote a book titled The Day My Life Changed, an Accident Survivor, where I take you on a journey before, during, and after a horrific event that nearly abilities, and it speaks of the power of prayer. And my second nonfiction book and my first poetry book and the audio book of my first book, The Day My Life Changed, an Accident Survivor, will soon be released by
Linda, I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment. They're telling us that the feedback is caused because one of us has our mics are too loud. Okay, so I'll mute mine. Linda, you unmute yours.
I'm sorry, my husband has to help me because I have bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome, which is permanent nerve damage to both of my hands. And this all stems from the accident. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you pretty well, actually.
Okay, great. Okay. I can't hear the host though.
Tony,
Hello?
tell us about your book now.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. My name is Tony Candela, and I am in the Bronx in New York City. So don't be surprised if you hear a siren go by sometime during our workshop. I wrote a book called Stand Up or Sit Out, Memories and Musings of a Blind Wrestler, Runner, and All-Around Regular Guy. It's a memoir, and it's basically life lessons learned by me through participating in sports as a blind athlete when I was much younger than I am now. And my purposes in writing the book were to explain to the world what it's like to be a blind athlete, what it's like to be blind, and basically to humanize the entire experience, to normalize it through providing information about what happens, why it happens, how things happen, and then also to get everybody excited about sports, because I love sports and I talk about them a lot in the book, so you know exactly what it was that I experienced as a wrestler and a runner. So It was a labor of love, and I hope it worked out that it would, kind of educate the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Crystal, tell us about your book.
Hi, my name is Crystal Summers, and let me see. Okay, hi, my name is Crystal Summers, and this is my first book. It's called From Meaningless to Purposeful. I wrote it about a significant period in my life where I was going through troubles, some struggles, some hardships. When as a mother, when I was raising my kids, when I was married, I'm still married, but some troubles before and during my marriage, also with my health, and how it all caused me to come into a loving relationship with my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. How I learned to discern his voice, and be obedient to his voice as well. So yeah.
Good for you. Good
And
for
also,
you.
I'm from Chicago, Illinois.
So you're a little farther closer to me.
Yeah.
Okay, Carrie, I'm in Denver. Carrie, tell us about your book. There you go.
Hi, my name is Carrie Marzok. I currently live in Canton, Ohio. Moved here 2.5 years ago after we lost our home in the flooding from Hurricane Ida back in Philadelphia. So living here, I have actually 5 books. I have 3 novels.
Wow.
Raven's Way, Raven's Rage, Order of the Claw. It's a series. And then I have The Reptilian Factor is a novel about a not so friendly alien who lives in Arizona. And I'm also a poet and I write short stories. I have a book of all poetry, A Sea of Emotion, and another book called Along a Burning Highway, which is a combination of poetry and short stories. And I'm working
Wow.
on more. And I'm working on more now. So
Good for you. Clarence, tell
thanks.
us about you.
Hi, my name is Clarence Cosby. I live in South Amboy, New Jersey. I wrote 4 books. One was Soul Exchange, Armageddon, Erebus the Ranger, and Talking to the Devil. So Soul Exchange is about a guy who wants to help out his family, live the dream of helping out his family, getting married, stuff like that, but inadvertently sells his soul. And Erebus the Ranger is about a young man who was raised in a kingdom and like the good king had died, and then a tyrant took over. So now he's on like the path to revenge because like they kicked out his family and hurt his friends and everything like that. Armageddon is pretty much about the end times, about like the rapture and everything like that. And Talking to the Devil is probably kind of controversial just by the name alone, only because the story's about like a guy named Gary Winscombe who just wants to have a talk with the devil about everything and give him a piece of his mind and everything, but it's not really what everybody really thinks it might possibly could be. So it's very interesting.
Wow. Louis, tell us about your book. You've already told me about your books, but tell
Well,
everyone else.
I was relieved to find out there's other fiction writers here. Not everybody was writing. I mean, I don't write serious things. I write just general fiction that has, normal everyday people characters, no extraterrestrial people or any. It's not mystical or anything like that. It's just regular people, and they just have issues and they resolve them. I have a book actually. Reader's Magnet made a website for me, a book for my first big book, which was called Great Mandala. And that follows a couple that who met in college, and they go through all the years from the 70s up into 2000, and they work for social change. And it's just the difficulties they run through working for social change, especially when they get to the end of the 2000s and realize nothing much has changed much. So they so that's what that book is. And I have another one that was it's just not romance. It's just a guy that's having problems, and it's called Choir Man, and it's a guy who runs a children's choir, and then he has issues with his marriage and things like that. And there's another one called Our Guy Rules, and it's really this guy is he loved the Beatles when he was growing up and always wanted to be like them. And now he's in his late 30s and he has a family and he still can't let go of that dream. So it's sort of a tragedy in that sense. But basically, I try to put humor in all my books, not fall down laughing, but just, it's not totally serious. So that's what I live for the others to know, excuse me. So I live in the Boston area. People that live anywhere within 25 miles of Boston, I always say Boston area. I live in a small town called Walpole, which borders on Foxborough, which has a famous stadium.
Okay, so
Right.
can I get off
Right.
you and then
All you sports folks. I see. So Sophia,
yes.
Kai, tell us about you.
Hello.
Tell us about your books. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you too for accepting me. I was just called by one of the author programs that there's this talk going on. So I'm kind of in the middle of other things. But my name is already there, and I'm originally from Ghana, West Africa. And I wrote My Sister, My Friend a while back and then republished it with Reader's Magnet. And it's just a small children's book telling how siblings can get along and have a more cordial relationship instead of fighting over
Everything.
favorite
Everything.
favorites, everything. Yes, you said it right.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that is what my book is about.
Well, I am so thrilled to have all of you here. This particular roundtable is a narrative techniques in the art of storytelling, and we're all authors, so all I could say is, who doesn't love a good story, and who doesn't love to hear a good story, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong. The world is essentially shaped by all of our stories and about where we are and what we do. Sometimes people think storytelling is very complex and very difficult, um, but I think everybody in daily conversations, if you tell about where you've been throughout the day, you're telling your story. And stories do go beyond words and beyond photographs and videos. Stories mostly come from right here for most of us. One of the first techniques in writing and in the art of storytelling, if you're writing a book or even if you're just talking, really, is to know your audience. Who are we speaking to? Some of you are speaking from the Lord. Some of you are speaking about everyday things that are happening to you, about your previous life. My particular book, One Caregiver's Journey, is about 9.5 years of caring for my mother before she passed away here in my home at the age of 102. So I was a caregiver for an entire decade. So my story, my book is written in what I would call conversation, because it is basically a journal of the ebb and flow of being a caregiver. But who are you speaking to? If you write children's books, you want to grab the attention of the child. If you're writing a political book, I don't know whose attention you want to grab there, but if you're writing a political book, you have to cross over a few lines to tell that story. Are you looking? What kind of an experience are you looking to create from your story? And you have to make people care. You have to have your emotions, and whether they're intellectually or aesthetically, you have to make your audience want to hear and listen to your story. So what I thought I'd do is throw out something that happened to me recently, and then open it up for you to talk about how you tell your stories in your books. What do you use? How do you do it? And how do you grab your audience? But recently, I went to a 50th wedding anniversary party. I've known the woman of this couple since we were teenagers, and I have known her husband since they started dating. And when we were in our early 20s, we decided we were going to go to Omaha. I am in Denver. We decided we were going to go to Omaha for the weekend to visit a good friend of ours who lived in Omaha. And this young man decided that we could drop him off in North Platte, Nebraska, which is on the way, and he could spend the weekend with his family. So we left after work about 5 o'clock this time of the year when it gets dark early. We got to North Platte, and his family owned a great big farm, acres and acres and acres of farm. And she had never met his family. I, of course, did not know them. I knew him, but not them. And the mother decided that we were not going on, that we were going to spend the night there. But what she didn't tell us is that we were going to spend the night on a sofa bed that was in a room in the barn. And so she brought us to the barn and showed us this cinder block room. And there was a sofa bed which she graciously opened for us, and a stack of blankets like I don't think I've ever seen before or since then, and left us to sleep in the barn. Now, what else was in the barn? It was dark when we walked in there, so I can't tell you what else was in there. I can tell you that you could smell the straw and the dirt. And so when we try to tell her story, and what I discovered at this anniversary party was that in 50 years of marriage, she had never told any of her siblings this story. So the audience was her family, and the reaction was kind of shocking, to be real honest with you. But tell me how you would tell your stories. How do you reach your audiences? Who is your audience? How do you reach them? How do you make them care to listen to what you have to say or what you have to write? Do you have Tony, do you just write to sports buffs?
Oh, I write a lot of different things, and anybody who knows me knows that I will start telling a story in the middle of conversations, and they will usually be too long. But I love telling stories because I love capturing people's attention with some kind of tension statement at the very beginning. Like, you wouldn't believe what happened, something like that. And I like using in my writing and in my speaking pauses, and as best as one can do it in writing, intonations. You can actually intone your voice through writing, I have discovered.
Absolutely.
Through various techniques. And to keep the audience glued to you, you have to keep the story moving. And the only other rule of thumb I follow is that I am pretty much chronological. When I start bouncing all over the universe and back and forth in time, I tend to lose myself and my audience. I try to stay somewhat orderly in my storytelling.
Right. I think that's I understand that. Carrie, how do you tell your stories? And you got a lot of stories you've told.
Yeah. Well, I've always, ever since a little girl, I've always, and my mom, I blame my mom for it. God bless her. She's in heaven. But she always liked the scary movies and the scary books, and no one else would watch them with her except for me. So that's how I ended up with my love of horror and science fiction. And I just think that my audience pretty much is teenagers on up into how old you can be and still love that type of genre. I also like suspense, and I'm just about done with my first suspense novel about a serial killer. But I think it's really, really important to develop strong characters, characters that your readers can really associate with. And I'm also extremely into the setting of your story. Like my Raven series takes place in Philadelphia, where I lived for so many years, and I know it so well. So when I write about certain things in Philadelphia, I try and make sure that the reader feels that they're there.
Right. Yeah, you always want to try to set the scene.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you.
Thanks.
Linda, how do you tell your stories?
Well, I tell my stories by trying to relate to everyday life, because my book is about and horrific accident. And I know that most people can relate to that. And also from that accident, I have learned so many of life's lessons. And so I try to incorporate those into my stories as well. So my story
You know what,
is,
that's very, very important. That's very important.
yes,
That's very
absolutely.
important to incorporate that. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So
Go on.
okay. So I just tell my story from my experience. And
I think
go ahead. I'm
that's
sorry.
wonderful. Oh, no, don't
Yes.
be sorry at all. That's most of us tell our stories from our experiences, I would say. Crystal, tell me about you.
Well,
There you go.
I tell my story from remembrance. And so
Okay.
as I was writing, I just remember um, how I was feeling at the moment, um, what I remember the conversation was at the moment. And yeah, and I like to, just be transparent about how I was feeling and what I was going through, because I know that um, I'm not the only one, and other women, mothers, wives, um, could relate, even if it was a little bit at the time what I was experiencing. And so I even remember a time when, before I wrote my story, I remember, just asking God, how come I have such a long memory? How come I can remember a lot of things? And I remember him telling me clearly as soon as I asked the question, that's because it was created for testimonies.
Ah, okay, Clarence, we have 2 minutes before we're going to take a little break here. So tell us about your storytelling.
So my storytelling is I like to give people visuals of like how certain characters look, how they're feeling, like maybe if like they have like some kind of tattoos or some kind of battle scars, I like to kind of go back and like explain like how they got the battle scars, how they're feeling throughout the day. I like to incorporate different like emotions or like realistic like situations in my story so people can kind of like relate to like what's going on in the stories to kind of build like more of a connection to all the characters. I also pretty much just kind of like go off of like maybe like if I'm like really like mad or angry at the time because of a situation or very happy or something like that, I always like input that into my stories as well because I want to make sure that if someone's like having like a bad day or a rough day or they're just tired, they can't find nothing on TV, that they can just kind of escape into the worlds of my books.
Right. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back, and we'll hear from Sophia and Lewis. Okay, here we are. So it looks like we lost Sophia. Clarence, no, Clarence has told me. Let's see, where are we? And there's Lewis. You're up in the other corner now. Tell us about your storytelling, Lewis. You have to unmute.
So I didn't know if you were controlling that or not.
No, I
Okay.
can't. I'm barely controlling
so I'm
myself
on my
right
own.
now.
All right, then now try to shut me up. I'd like to say that Mike, I agree with I think it was Carrie talked about character. I like to make my characters very approachable. I like to make them people like the guy you used to work with in the next cubicle, or the guy you knew down on the assembly line, or the guy whose kid played Little League with your kid, just regular people. And so that the reader could relate to that and say, oh, that's just me. And in my goal for the books really is to entertain, not so much to inspire. And and that's what I do with the books. And at some point maybe educate, like I like whatever the character's doing, like for a living, I get into detail of what they do and how they work, and maybe pass on a little information to the reader on how they work. But again, just getting back to the original sentence, it's really character that I use to get my story across.
So tell me, how do we? So we all know our various audiences. We all understand and know them, and because we write chronologically, or we write very very much about what's happening in our lives or what's happening in our characters' lives. We set the scene. We set the scene in writing our books. So how can you be creative? We need to be creative. We not to be limited by words, but we're writers. So all we have is words. So we have to be able to create in our mind the scene we want to express. So tell me some of the ways you all enjoy and I guess maybe most important, we have to enjoy our process of storytelling. We have to be able to, and not all of, I know in my particular case, I would imagine in Linda's particular case, and I would imagine in pretty much all of our cases, our stories aren't always happy. Our stories aren't always happy, but they have meaning, and they have a purpose, and they have something that we're trying to share with everyone. So in that standpoint, you have to learn how to enjoy the process. So tell me how do you engage this? How do you use your tensions? How do you do you end your books with some sort of a grand finale, or do you just end your books like this is what it was all about? Any one of you go ahead and unmute and let's talk about it. Let's try to have an interactive conversation. And if you want to ask questions of each other, please do so.
Well,
Lewis.
if you want me to go.
I don't care. Go. Who wants to go? Okay, go.
Okay, well, I'll just talk a little bit from my standpoint.
Okay.
I like to put myself in my books. And I so a lot of times, especially each of my books has a strong female character, and realistically I am that female character, and so when I'm writing, I'm feeling how that scene is going. I'm feeling the tension, I'm feeling the fear, and a lot of my readers have told me that reading my books is like watching a movie. And so so that tells me that they can feel and see exactly what I'm trying to get across. And because my books
they feel the tension in your horror.
They do. And I always I like to grab right away in that first chapter. So to me, that first chapter has to be, it just has to grab them that they want to read the second chapter and they want to read the third chapter. I've read books already where I'm into chapter 4 and 5 and I can't figure out what's happening with the book. So I think it's really important to grab your reader right away. So,
and to that point, a large percentage of people, and I think this is very important, a large percentage of people start reading books who never finish them.
true.
They either lose interest or they just lose interest. So that story isn't connecting with them. Crystal, what do you think?
As far as
How do you grab? How do you make sure that? How do you create the tension and engage your audience with your stories about your experience?
Just with a lot of details, details about my feelings, details when it can't just with suspense, like like even when it part of my story was when I wrote about how I caught my he wasn't my husband at the time, but how I caught him up and a lie with his phone. And as I was writing it, I could feel the tension. So I had to relive those moments and just like, okay, this happened. And then as he was sleeping, I went over there and got this. And it's just with the drama and the suspense.
Wow. Clarence, talk to me.
I usually, well, some of my books I pretty much just end them, but some of the books that Erebus the Ranger, I kind of left it hanging where there was some action there. I want to find out what's going to happen to him. The next series of books and the books that I'm writing now, where I always like to put roller coasters in my books. Always kind of keep it up and down, and put little plot twists that you kind of really maybe can't really figure out what's going on. So by the end of the book, you kind of want to really find out, if something else is going to happen to the character, or what else could possibly go wrong, or is there something else that's going to come into the character's life, or just what's going to happen and everything. I always try to mix it up from the beginning to the middle until the end. I always kind of from high up and then bring them down and bring them back up again. Always just kind of throwing a little mix of excitement, drama, thriller, action, stuff like that.
A little bit of everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Lewis, I'm looking at Tony, but I'm talking to Lewis. Lewis,
yes.
Come back to you, Tony. Tell us do you enjoy the process of storytelling?
It's funny. I always tell this to people. I wish writing was as easy as reading, but it's not. No, it's work. But I find once I get warmed up and the words start flowing, it's great. But it's always getting the engine running again. So that's in that sense, yes, it's enjoyable because to me it's rewarding, especially if I have a book and I see it and it's got a cover and it's been printed and I'm holding it in my hand. It's a great reward for that.
I don't think there's anything more humbling than to pick up a book and see your name on it and to think you wrote it and to think it's your experiences. And that's an Italian family cookbook, by the way. But to think that it's your experiences and what's close to you. The first time I held One Caregiver's Journey, really a very humbling experience since it was about my mother, and I'm not sure it's something I'll ever really forget. Okay, Tony, and then we'll come back to Linda.
I like to I guess I ascribe to the theory that even the most microscopic thing that happens is taking place inside of the whole universe. So somehow, in my hubris, I think that I can frame almost any story I'm telling into the context of the greater universe in some way. Not literally, but to get the picture to the reader that they are also a part of this. I try to give them the context in which I'm writing that they might be able to relate to. So in that respect, even the littlest things that may not mean anything to anybody else probably mean a lot to a lot more people than you would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely cannot agree more. If you think it's minutia, it many times is not. Linda, how do you enjoy telling your story? And even though your story is your personal journey, which actually is very much like mine, it was my personal journey. We have a lot in common in that you try to get people to relate.
Absolutely. God is first and foremost in my life. So I always put the Holy Scriptures in my book. And as you just said, you and I can relate because, too, I was a caregiver at one point in my life when my mama had terminal cancer and she passed away, so I can relate with you on that alone. And so that's what I try to do in my books. I try to write stories that I know that the average person can relate to. And it's just so empowering to me when I get the feedback, how my story has touched so many lives in so many different ways, but good ways.
No, I think that's true. I think that's true. Yes. And I think that each of us have made that particular comment in one way or the other in just our discussion right here. Our stories that we tell really are meant to not as much be for us as much as they are to be for others. And, there's a certain amount of entertaining and a certain amount of tension. And we use sometimes you end with the grand finale, you end with the boat blowing up. And sometimes you have to try to figure out how to let people know where you were. What if are you on the beach? Are you listening to the birds? Are you watching the waves? Are you driving through the snow? Are you walking through a field of flowers? Try to make people understand and create a visual of the story you're trying to create. Crystal, I will tell you that I worked with the young lady for years. We're still friends. We're still good friends. And her ex-husband shot her and left her for dead. And the stories that came out of her, she survived, and how she has her life to domestic violence, and how she's quite an author in her own right on that subject. Carrie, I have a 35-year-old niece that would love you because she can't get enough horror in her life.
Oh yeah,
she loves horror. If a horror movie comes out, she wants to go see it. She wants to tell you all about it. And I'm not always that interested, but you know what? I let her talk. Chronology, Tony, you use chronology. I use chronology. It sounds like Crystal. It sounds like we've all used chronology in our books. Carrie likes to grab them with that first 10 words. Tell me about your chronologies, Tony. How do you deal with chronology? Do you just talk about your life in a path as opposed to zigzag?
Yeah, pretty much. I fall into the trap once in a while of trying to portend something, and then I've got to bounce around a little bit, and that's something I try to avoid, mostly because people tell me I should avoid portending too much. But that's one time when I do bounce around in time a little bit. Mostly, though, I think my mind just works that way. It's just easier for me to stay in a straight chronological path as much as I can. And I've written a science fiction novella, and it was very straight chronological as well. The beginning, the middle, and the end.
No, I think that works pretty. That's pretty straightforward. No doubt about that. Clarence, tell us about. Do you end your stories with the finale, or do you just, how do you do that? Do you end your stories with word, with advice? I guess would be the better word.
I usually use like with some of my books, I usually just like just end it like with like something like major happening at the very end. Like in my one book, Erebus the Ranger, like I had like this great big battle like at the very end, and then like you see the character right off, but you hear like the main character talking to like one of the other characters in the book, saying, you know, like, I'll see you again sometime, or if you want to get in contact with me, you know, contact with me. So I always kind of like leave it open. But there's like certain books that I know that I want to have a series for, and then there's some that if it's just like a standalone book, I just end it.
See, now, my caregiving book didn't end when my mother passed away. I actually wrote it another 6 or 7 months, as I had been her sole caregiver for 10 years. So I wrote about what it was like to reintegrate into a world that had passed me by for 10 years and to try to catch up with everything that happened outside my four walls. So that was again chronology, but it was an eye opener for this little girl. Louis, tell us how you end your stories.
The end. No, I think sort of like what Clarence does. I kind of the reader knows it's the end of the story, but also it kind of leaves open, well, what's going to happen to this guy, even though it may not be a sequel or a prequel, whatever. It's just it's not totally like, okay, happily ever after. It's always, again, just leave the reader. Basically, they get their own interpretation of it. What I do is when I start out, speaking of chronological, I have my characters right in the beginning. They either have a problem or they have a goal, and that just moves forward in time with, you know, the goal and the problems. You know, they weave in and out of each other, and eventually it gets to the end. And I, you know, it's interesting. The other thing is there was this thing, Scott Fitzgerald, one of my teachers. That's sarcasm. He said this thing called dying fall. And you get to the end of your book. It could go on, you know, the book could keep going on, but then you just take it, just drop it. Just take 2 or 3 pages and end the story.
Got to quit at some point. Those people that write, I commend the person that can write a 400-page book, but I really don't know how you would do it. I commend the people that can write a 400-page book, but I'm not sure that I would know how you would do it. Crystal, tell me, when your story ends, does it end on a positive note? Does it end on lessons you learned were positive? You came out of the fire positive.
Yes, my story ended with, first of all, I had a bit of a creative flow when I ended my story. And so, yes, it did end on a positive note because, you know, through my story, I was telling about how my life went from meaningless to purposeful. So I ended my story with saying, like, this was not the end, but the beginning of something new. So I just wanted the readers to know that this purposeful thing, it doesn't end here. It's still going. And I'm thinking like it might even be, knowing my God, it might even be a part 2 in a few more years. So,
Good for you.
yeah.
Okay, Carrie, how do you end a horror story? Do you end it with horror or do you end it positive?
I, each of my novels have ended with something happening which would lead it into the next novel. So I like series books. In other words, books in a series, and
Sure.
because I like to once I gravitate towards a certain character, I really want to follow that character through the good times, the bad times, the ups and the downs, and so each of my books will end with okay, fine, I want to read more, but darn it, now I got to wait for the next book.
Now I got to buy the next book.
Yeah, and I want to.
Yeah, now I got to buy the next book. Linda, tell us, how do your stories end? The day your life changed, does your story have an uplifting ending?
Oh yes,
absolutely. One of survival and one of grit, one of happiness.
Yes, absolutely. And I usually, just end my story on a positive note, just by letting people know that if I can go through it and get to the other side, so can they.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I applaud that as well. If you can walk through the fire and come out with just a few singes on you, you're ahead of the game.
Yes,
we've got about 5 minutes left. Does anybody has this been helpful to anybody? Has it been, have we learned anything? We've certainly learned a lot about each other, but has it been helpful? Storytelling is what you make of it, and it's how you do it, and it's how you grab the attention of your audience, how you end your stories, whether it's chronology, but I think we all would agree that we'd like to be able to write books that people want to read and not want to read the first 3 pages and put down. At least yes. I would hope they'd like to read some of my books and not put the 3 pages down. Tony, anybody let's unmute for the next few minutes and let's just have a quick conversation.
Everybody talk at once.
Well, I'm impressed at the variety and the quality of the folks that are on this in this workshop, and makes me feel more confident to know that you can do your own thing and be successful at it. And there's such a variety of things that you can actually do and the ways you do it. So this has made me feel more confident in, that I'm okay.
Good for you.
Such a variety.
Good for you. Yeah, this is really the can of all the different flowers in the garden, no doubt. Carrie, was this helpful for you?
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's nice to talk to other authors because you don't always get that chance, and get their feedback and know how they've gotten through everything and how they've developed their stories. I just want to say something in regards to yourself and your book, Ellie. I took care of my husband for 5.5 years before he passed away. And my best friend at the time moved back to Philadelphia to be with me from Colorado, so that I wouldn't be alone. And then we lived 8 years together, and she just passed away, and I took care of her for the last 3 months. So I'm interested in your story, so I may just reach out to get that book.
Thank you. One Caregiver's Journey. I wrote my book based on the book, The Last Lecture, which is very chronological order, And it's basically a snapshot of the changes and the challenges that a caregiver goes through when you do it for 10 years.
It's very hard.
I was very fortunate. My mother was very docile, very loving. She was very, very quiet. She had a smile that would light up a room and a pair of blue eyes that would just make your heart crack. But I know that not all caregivers have that. I know there's a lot of people that are pretty difficult to take care of. So I thank you for that. I commend anyone who takes care of someone else. I commend anyone who goes through difficult times and comes out shining on the other side to tell their story and to be their own storyteller. I think that Festival of Storytellers, the way Reader's Magnet has put together, is just a wonderful opportunity for authors from actually internationally and from all over to come together and share how they got to where they are. I mean, we're all in a different place. We're all sitting someplace different. And even though I'm in a background, I'm sitting in my living room, but we're all in our homes and we're all good. It's all good.
That's right.
It's all good.
Yeah.
And regardless of where we are, I am a firm believer that where you are is where you're supposed to be. And this is our destiny, is to spend this hour together.
Yes,
and
it's been
I would like to thank all of you for participating. I'd like to thank you all for sharing how you've written your books and how you've gone through trials and tribulations, how you've taken your childhood horror movies and turned them into your books, and how you've turned your love for sports into book writing, and into how we all write about our lives and where we are. I'm just grateful. I think this has been for me, it's been a fun time. And I see our hour is up, but I thank you all. And I hope you will all come back and join us again. And for Reader's Magnet, I'm Emily Gazzetta, and this has been the narrative of the technologies and the techniques of the art of storytelling. Mark, take it away. Thank you all. Bye for now.
Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher. It is about us, the authors.